Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to my channel. This is my 2025 energy update. We're going to look into the energies of the entire year. What are the main themes, the main topics? What are the things that are going to come front and center in your life? I will give you the overall overarching umbrella, if you will, of the year. What are the things that you should be aware of? What are the things that you should be excited about? We're going to look at the macro level, the world at large, perhaps some particular countries, depending, as well as you individually, the energies that are coming for each and every single one of you. All of this and more in this video. Now, before we dive in, I invite you to check out One Mother, my meditation app. It is available through the App Store, so it's available through iOS. One Mother is a child of love. It is something that is more than your regular meditation app, if we're being completely honest. Every meditation is channeled from spirit. It is downloaded with the highest good of yourself in mind. And every meditation is a deep set journey, so it's deeper than your traditional meditations that are purely for relaxation purposes. The meditations that I put out are very healing. They do take you several layers deeper than perhaps what you're used to. And so I do hope that you consider downloading. There are some free meditations there that you could listen to just get a taste of what it is. Now, meditations and the value of these kinds of journeys cannot be overestimated. It helps really regulate your nervous system down to a level where you can find optimal performance. It really helps lower your stress levels. If you have anxiety or, just heightened emotions, it really helps bring you back to center. But more so than probably any other meditation app, it is here to connect you to your soul, to connect you to spirit, your spirit guides, twin flame, source consciousness, all of the above. So it really exists to help bridge the gap between temporal existence and the world that is quite timeless, the world of spirit. And I like to think that if your higher self had a choice around which meditation app to pick for you, it would select One Mother. Again, it's available through App Store, and I do hope you give it a shot. All right, my darlings, the energies of 2025. What an interesting year. What a charged year. It is a busy year. It is a year of a lot of happening. It is quite a ride. An intense ride, if I say so myself. Buckle up. 2025, here we come. If I were to give a moniker to the year, I would say that 2025 is a year of deep soul searching, of looking for your purpose and potentially finding it, as well as logical conclusions and completions. So that is overall the vibration of the year. I would be lying to you if I said that the year is going to be easy. The year of 2025 is going to be a little bit of an emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, physical roller coaster. It's going to be a very fast-paced year in certain instances, and then a year of complete, almost like pause and full stop in others. So it's either going to go too fast or it's going to go too slow, and there's going to be very little in between. So some parts of the year are going to feel very viscose. It's almost like time just drags and like you're not really going anywhere. It's going to feel like you're in a vacuum. And then other parts of the year are going to feel so fast paced that you're not going to quite know what, it's going to be very, very hard for you to take a breather. So 2025 is a year of a lot of soul searching. Maybe let's start there. Individually for people, as well as collectively for nations, as well as for the world at large. It is the year of the 9. 9 is an alchemical number. What does that mean? In numerology, alchemical numbers are the ones that bring about the most transformation of anything. What is transformation in its essence? It's taking one thing and then shifting it into something completely other. And by the way, when you start that process, you're not quite sure what you're going to get at the end because everything is put inside of a pressure cooker. And the levels of transformation, your personal ones as well as the world at large, may surprise you next year. So it is a year of a lot of surprises. It's a year of a lot of curveballs. It's a year that is actually really hard to predict. Meaning, in other words, what you think you're going to get out of the year is not what you actually are going to get out of the year. So the year will surprise you. The year will challenge you. And the year will take you on a journey. 2025 feels like multiple years condensed into a single year in terms of how thick the events are going to be. It's a lot. A lot is going to happen, like I said, for you individually as well as for us at the collective level. So, when I say it is a year of soul searching, what next year is going to do for you is it will force you to ask very existential questions, such as, who am I really? Why am I here? What is the deeper meaning, purpose behind this? Why have I shown up at this time? Why is all of this madness, craziness, etc. going on? What is my role in this, etc., etc.? So all of these existential questions are going to really come front and center for you. In fact, I'd venture to say that we're going to be tight-pressed to find a human being currently incarnated that could just bypass this existential questions altogether. I mean, perhaps kids, right? Like somebody below a certain age. But if you are of age, 18 plus, you are going to be faced with these questions. And not only in a philosophical kind of manner, like let me reminisce or let me think about it on a Sunday or a Saturday. No, those existential questions come full force and they may take you over, as in, some of you may feel like the answers that you are searching for are going to lead you on a journey that you could not have possibly predicted. In other words, next year is going to bring you on your own hero's journey to try to look for answers. To try to look for answers within, to try to look for answers without. It's an uncertain year, meaning there's not a whole lot of clarity. There's a whole lot of questioning, but you, up until the very end of the year, you're not going to feel like you have the answer pinned down. So it's a year of a lot of searching and not a lot of finding. And perhaps the beauty is in the discovery itself. Perhaps the beauty is in the adventure. And if there's one thing that 2025 is here to remind us, is that it is about the journey and not just the destination. Because actually next year, it's not going to feel like you're arriving at a place. Despite the fact that it is a year of completion, usually in numerology, you definitely have it's like a full stop at the end of the sentence because we go on 9-year cycles. This 9 is not going to feel like a completion. It's going to feel like a question mark at the end of the sentence. So it's going to be like, okay, really? Is that where we are? Interesting. And again, this applies to you individually as well as to the human collective, right? So it's the macro and the micro are all kind of like swimming in this energy of the questioning 9. When I say existential questions, what do I mean? The questions that are not surface level, the questions that are bigger than life, the questions that really make you reassess where you are in life. They will, and by the way, those existential questions are going to organically make you reassess everything. Because not only are you going to be questioning, what is your purpose and why you are here, you're going to be questioning whether your job supports that, whether your career path supports that, whether how things are in your relationship, romantic and otherwise, supports your purpose, whether how you show up in life, how you express yourself, how you express your creativity, whether that supports your bigger purpose. So it's all like essentially all roads would lead to Rome, and Rome in this case next year being purpose. So purpose is going to be the word that a lot of you are going to obsessively think about. So it's the year of searching for your North Star, and that star being very elusive and kind of like, it's going to feel like you make a step towards it, and it's going to feel like it's getting closer. And then it's like the answer escapes you last minute. So there's a little bit of that frustration next year with, am I on the right path? No, but am I really on the right path? Okay, and if I'm not, what is the right path, right? So there's a whole lot of questioning and those answers being very, very elusive. Not a lot of clarity, unfortunately, for humanity next year. I will tell you that some of the best journeys begin with a question. It's not about having the answer. It's about asking the right question. So the good news is this next 9-year cycle is going to bring a lot of people way closer to their predetermined path and to being aligned with how their higher selves wished their lives would be lived. But it's not going to come without trials and tribulations. So we are being tested as humanity. We're being tested in regards to, can we even ask the right questions? Can we walk the walk? Are we courageous enough to dig deep and understand how deep the rabbit hole goes? Are we courageous enough to commit to something? Do we have what it takes to follow through on our path when we already know what the path is all about? All of those things and more are going to come front and center for you next year. In some ways, it feels like a very high-level year in terms of impact. So the things that you're questioning and the answers that you're getting, whatever those may be, are going to become very formative for the rest of your journey, for the rest of your incarnation. So some of the things, some of the insights, some of the aha moments of next year for you are going to be quite axis shifting, meaning they would shift the axis of your life. They may tilt it. They may completely change it. And there's all of this change brewing in the air for the collective, meaning it's like there is this buzzing, there is that vibration of things cannot go on the way that they have been. So there may be a lot of tension. Tensions are very high. This is a very moody year. There are a lot of fires raging inside of each of us individually as well as humanity as a collective. So it's not a very placid, peaceful year, quite the opposite. It feels like the fires, when they're going to rage quite dramatically. It's like a flare-up. It's like an inflammation. However, through that inflammation, certain parts of the world are going to be healed. Certain things could come back to equilibrium, but it's going to be through a flare-up. So don't expect the easy, no questions asked, smooth sailing, because that's not what 2025 is all about. There's going to be some rough patches and rough edges. You may find yourself having a short fuse for the things that you usually have a lot of patience for. But those are precisely the supportive energies to help you get yourself outside of your comfort zone, because the questions you're going to be asking yourself next year around who you are and why you're here, and by the way, is everything in your life aligned to that bigger purpose? Those are uncomfortable questions because the answers you may receive could entail that everything has got to shift. Everything has got to change. You will also start having a lot less patience for the things that are not aligned. For example, if you're at a job that you detest, you're going to find it extremely hard to stay put. It's going to be almost like an invisible force is going to lead you onward and forward, telling you, make a change. Make a change. The time is now. You got this. So a lot of you, and by the way, for some of you, it may come out of nowhere. And for others, it was already the entire universe has already been leading you to that answer, is that certain changes are going to happen in your life. There are some things that you cannot postpone indefinitely. So for some of you, this next year, the upcoming year, the 25, is going to be about facing the music. Is going to be about coming to terms and finally seeing yourself full force. It's like the veil is lifted, and all of a sudden the things that you have been denying, the things you've been avoiding, the things that you really wanted to brush under the rug, all of a sudden they're going to stare you in the face. And you're going to look at your own shadow perhaps, or you're going to look at your own avoidance patterns, or you're going to look at your own self-sabotage and finally see it for what it is. And that may, in and of itself, prompt you to start making changes, right? So certain things that are going to start shifting, and by the way, next year is all about shifts and changes, right? Again, it's not a smooth sailing. It's a lot of things are up in the air, and it's almost like things are being shaken up and nothing has landed yet. So everything is up in the air. Everything is trying to figure out what's its perfect place to land. Nothing yet has landed. So certain parts of the year are going to feel like the big vacuum. They're not going to feel very grounding, or you're not going to feel very grounded. right? And especially if you tend to operate in the higher centers, on the high chakras, you may find that you need a lot more grounding next year than you normally do. And that is okay. It is good to know that so you can come equipped into that next year. Understanding that, you're going to have to work hard at maintaining your sanity. I will tell you this. In 2025, humanity is going to be extremely influenceable by media. Not that humanity normally is not, but just pay attention to how much the news next year can really get you off your center and off kilter. And some of you are going to start shifting your perspective around what you consume in terms of news and in terms of information, because it will get overwhelming. And a whole lot of people are going to wake up to this deep truth within themselves that the news is getting them more off center. Watching the news is actually an unhealthy habit. And there's that big shedding moment that's happening for humanity. There's a lot of shedding, by the way, the next year, according to the Chinese zodiac, is the year of the snake. The snake sheds its skin all the time. And, when we go through the process of shedding, it's like a mini cycle of death and rebirth. Next year, there's a lot of shedding. A lot of planets are in retrograde. Literally, most major planets would have their retrograde moments. What does that mean? That usually shows you that there is a completion of a cycle and that we have some loose ends to tie up. So next year, if you find yourself feeling like you've seen the movie before, meaning there is a particular pattern that just keeps coming back to you like a bad penny, whether that's a pattern in relationships, whether this is a pattern related to money, whether this is a pattern related to your dreams and aspirations, your self-worth, or whatever that may be. If it feels like a bad penny and it keeps coming back and there's no escaping that pattern, know that it is a moment and an invitation to tie the loose ends and shed things for good once and for all. There are going to be many, many openings in the weft of existence, call it, next year, where you are going to be invited to re-examine what are the dead weights that you keep carrying around. What is that heavy backpack that you keep carrying on? And that backpack usually would be filled with beliefs that are limiting, emotions that are stifling, mental constructs that are just debilitating, memories perhaps that you're holding on to that are just dead weight scenarios. All of those things, right, are like a heavy load that is really preventing you from moving forward at the pace that you're meant to. And so next year, ask yourself, or keep asking yourself, what else am I meant to be shedding? What else am I meant to be shedding? As part of the shedding process, you're going to come up with a lot of resistance, or come up against a lot of resistance. Meaning, a part of you or parts of you are going to be in massive resistance to the shifts, to the changes, and to the calling of your soul, to your purpose, or stepping into your purpose deeper. Because even if you are on purpose, ironically, even if you have clarity around your purpose, it's the deepening of that purpose. It's that next level over. It's that upgrade that is coming for you in the next, essentially 9 to 10 year cycle. So for those of you that already are on purpose, you would be questioning, how deeply are you committed to that? And how can you deepen your work? How can you be even more on purpose? How can you do more? How can you stay even more aligned? Either way, it opens up a whole new level for you of what's available. But it's not going to be easy, like a smooth, easy transition. What it is going to be is an invitation to shed all of those layers that no longer belong and that are holding you back. And so it's actually a massive shedding of false beliefs and false programming for humanity. It is a deep shedding of ancestral patterns that make you feel stuck. So there are some rough times with certain families. There may be flare-ups next year in your relationships with your parents. That parent-child relationships are tense next year. Enough so that, there may be fallings out for some people. But it is because it is part of the healing. It is because all of these energies are coming through for you to work through the patterns that are holding everybody hostage, frankly, right? Because if you feel held back by a certain pattern as a child, do know that your parents are held back by the same exact pattern, right? If your wings are clipped, their wings are clipped just as badly in roughly the same exact spots, right? And, there is this potential for liberation. There is this potential for shedding. Going back to this analogy of like the snake and the shedding, usually there is like one big cycle of death and rebirth per year, 1 to 2 for people individually and society at large. I'm seeing on average 9 cycles of death and rebirth next year for a human being alive and well on planet Earth. That is a lot of change. That is a lot of potential pain and suffering and resistance for humanity. The good news is you come out on the other side so much lighter and so much better equipped to deal with a whole new set of energies and codes coming through for planet Earth. The energies of the Gaia are rising and humanity is becoming a little bit too heavy to carry. In order for us to keep being the vibrational match to this planet, we're going to have to elevate. We're going to have to shed. We're going to have to release. We're going to have to face the music. And that is what next year is all about. When I say it's a year of soul searching, it feels like a person wandering around in the dark a little bit, or like a person wandering around in the forest or in the maze of some sort. There's not a lot of visibility. But one thing I will tell you is during years of the 9, you're always guided. There are always many beings on the other side beyond the veil, your spirit guides, that are managing that process for you. It is a process that is micromanaged, in fact. So if at any point you feel extremely lonely and like it is you against the world, or it's like you against all of the pressure, know that you are being guided every step of the way. And if a process of shedding is happening, it is because it is time. And that's another beautiful thing about the energies of the 9. When transformation comes for you, it is because it has fully hatched and because you're fully ready. Because half-baked things are not going to be able to come into your vicinity next year. That is not the energy of the 9, because 9 is all about completion. It's all about finishing something. It's all about coming into fruition for some things. Now, when I say completion, for the 9, it's not actually in a morbid sense. Like we're not necessarily talking divorce. We're not necessarily talking breakups. Not that kind of heartbreak. We're talking about certain things coming to a logical end, certain things outliving their welcome, certain things in your life not serving you in the way that they used to before. And it's going to become very crystal clear to you what those things are. It's going to be painfully obvious that there are certain things that are about to finish their cycle, complete their course, and they're going to start falling away. It's almost like it's going to be like a tree that starts shedding the leaves about to go into hibernation in the winter, like that type of situation where the project is not fully, completely over yet, or whatever, whatever we have in question doesn't have to be a project. A process could be a process. And it's like the remnants of it are still there, but you already see the end in sight. And for a lot of the projects, for a lot of the processes, it's a very welcome end. But what makes 25 emotionally uncomfortable is all of these people, everybody essentially asking what's next, but there's not a whole lot of clarity. I will tell you there's a lot more clarity in 26. So if you expect to have all the answers in 25, if you expect to have it all figured out, I'll tell you right now so you can relax. It's just not going to happen. In other words, you may get visibility like 1 or 2 steps ahead, but you're not going to get full-on visibility. However, it is still important to ask the existential questions, because it is through the process of asking and through the process of seeking that you finally realign with who you are and what you're meant to be. And to some degree, 9 is also a spiritual year. It is going to bring a lot more people into spirituality. For a lot of people, it's going to deepen your spiritual practice. For a lot of people, if you haven't been meditating, you're going to start to meditate, because the pressures of the world outside of you are going to become so great that you're going to want that respite. You're going to want that little island unto yourself of calm and peace and serenity. And of course, there are meditation apps for that. One Mother, my app being one. Now, you would notice that next year there's going to be that need for some of you to withdraw. There's going to be that need for some of you to find your alone space and figure out what it is that you want. And it is a little bit of trying to separate yourself from the other people in your life that have an influence as you're searching for your North Star, as you're trying to look for your purpose. You're going to want some alone time. You're going to want some introspection time. You're going to want to do some deep journaling, some very deep energy practices to try and to understand what is it that makes you you, how are you unique and different, and what are you being called to do in the next phase of your life, in the next phase of your journey. And so a very healthy practice, if you're trying to find the truth within, is to imagine that you're standing under a dome of white light, and that dome of white light is protecting you. And then you would want to get present to how many people there are inside of that dome. And essentially everybody with an opinion about your life that you care about is going to be inside of the dome. All of your relatives, all of your family members, your significant others, your parents, your children, your friends, your bosses, all of the above. And what you want to do is you want to start removing those people and just taking them outside of your dome. And then you would also notice that there are all of these ears and eyes plastered all along the perimeter of the dome, kind of like all of these people watching you, all of these people hearing you, all listening in, all of these people tuning in, all of these watchful eyes, like people who are potentially about to judge you. And you would notice that if you were to just remove all of those eyes and ears, there's so much silence. There's so much space. And there is room for you to finally tune in to the very quiet murmur, whisper of your soul speak. And that is where the depth of insight lies. So if you were to look for clarity next year, don't look for it outside of yourself. Look for it inside of your inner sanctuary, inside of your heart. And because 9 really is a number that really helps connect upwards, connect to your higher self, connect to your spirit guides, connect to source consciousness itself to try to get those answers. And remember, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. That is the most important thing next year. As far as the macro situation, there are going to be tensions. Now, whether macro or micro, by the way, right? Like next year is not a very peaceful year. And again, you don't see that a lot with the 9s. The 9s are usually very diplomatic, very peacekeeping, very nice. But there's a lot of Aries, the energy of Aries next year, which is still very Martian, very, very warlike. So there are a lot of, the conflicts are still going to be there. The war is still going to be there. There are going to be some flare-ups, unexpected. Some people having short fuse. So there's, that tensions run very high next year. And as much as 9 is a year of completion, it's not necessarily going to be the completion of these war conflicts. In fact, we may see new ones come to the map that have not been there. And again, an inflammation, though, is always a sign of healing and a process of healing. Through these wars, through these attacks, through the use of weaponry, unfortunately or fortunately, what is happening is humanity's clearing some of its pent-up anger. And what is also coming front and center as a theme next year is injustice. Certain things, it's almost like the war against injustice is one of the themes of the year. There are certain things that you see in society that are just going to feel completely unjust, like it's going to feel like things are not fair, whether it's to a particular group of people, whether it's with how the laws are being stacked, or what, like it's just like that theme of fairness, which is not usually again the theme of the 9, but it is very front and center this year. Like there's going to be, call it a high sensitivity for things that seem unfair, and humanity is going to have a very short fuse for being lied to, for things being concealed, for being manipulated, and for all kinds of fear-mongering, right? So the tensions, again, because of that, are quite high. And, it will become actually very funny. Certain conspiracy theories are going to come front and center, be confirmed as not so much conspiracy theories. So there's a little bit of that disclosure happening as well. And it's going to open a whole lot of people's eyes to what's actually going on. So that is a positive thing. However, I don't see that short term creating a lot of comfort in people. In fact, I see that disclosure create a lot of uncertainty and pain in people's hearts and also fears. It's like, wow, I can't believe that's true. What a crazy world we live in. So there's a little bit of that, of like being taken aback by the reality and what's going on and some of the undercurrents of politics, etc., and how this world is being run. Some of the things coming front and center that's not going to feel very comfortable in the moment whatsoever. It's almost like you can't hide from it. When the truth is there, the truth is there. And so each of us individually is going to have to go through the process of self-regulating next year, because the fire energies are very high and you're going to have to regulate back into calm, back into water. And again, alone time really helps with that, but not when you're watching the news. Meditation practice as a practice, though, like a daily meditation practice really helps. Long baths with Epsom salts, being next to large bodies of water and just like going for a swim. Like if you are in doubt of what exercise to pick next year, pick swimming. That is going to regulate your nervous system like nothing else would. Yeah, just saying. So anything that is soothing, calming, like going to sauna, going to a spa, getting massages, all of these things have to become part of your routine. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Gentle yoga flows, like yin yoga, especially if you're a female. Yoga nidras, around deep relaxation practices, are extremely soothing next year. So do consider those as a way of regulating your emotions, as a way to regulate your mental state as well. What else around the macro? I don't think that it's going to be a big surprise if I told you that technology is going to make big strides next year. Now, unfortunately, with some technological progress, we're seeing some pretty dark undercurrents in there. So there are some hidden agendas around AI specifically, which I don't love. Now, have I seen them coming? Absolutely. Are they now finally coming to fruition? Yes. There are going to be legitimate concerns around AI in the way that you perhaps have not seen yet from folks that are pretty high up, as well as just folks individually. Now, is AI all bad? No, not to say that. Obviously, AI is also going to be integrated more and more so into businesses and business flows, and there are going to be high aspects and light aspects to AI and how helpful it can be to humanity. But there is also that incessant, and it's like, for now, it's a little bit of a whisper. We're not seeing that full on yet. Like give us another 5 to 7 years. That's going to come very front and center. But there is a murmuring of fear against automation. Another way to call it is the fear of robotics. There's going to be some pretty big advancements in the robotic science. And one thing that starts bringing to the surface is this innate fear of humanity that the robots are going to take over, which goes above and beyond AI, right? Because AI doesn't technically have a body, right? So people usually have a harder time being afraid of software than they do of hardware. In this case, it's not really being afraid for your life, but it's being afraid that the robots are going to take your jobs. So we're going to continue to see strikes against automation, but it's, again, just the beginning, because humanity is just now, compared to where things are going to be around, like the fear and like the rejection of robotics. This is just like the very first a couple of waves around how humanity feels about that. Now, of course, not everybody's going to feel that way. You're going to have a lot of white-collar workers that they're like, okay, well, automation is going to happen. But you're going to have a lot of blue-collar workers that are going to feel extremely taken aback by some of those advancements. And again, like, it's an inexplicable, a very subconscious fear that really goes after the root chakra, the root center, which is like safety, basic safety. Can I put food on the table for myself and my family? There is that coming through for humanity. A lot of rash decisions by politicians next year. Not a year of diplomacy. Some pretty weird scandals, some pretty weird movements from the US and from Europe, just like a lot of turmoil. Some interesting undercurrents from China, actually. But China, they're setting up for something big, but it's going to be very covert. And initially, it's not even going to be seen for the next couple of years. But definitely watch out for what China is doing. They're like playing their own game under the table, and it's quite interesting. It's fascinating. Yeah. A lot. What else? What else is here? I mean, a lot of advancements. Some of them are hidden in the biosciences, like with the artificial insemination. A lot of those technologies are really going to be amped up next year. A lot of scientific discoveries, a lot of advancements there, and a whole lot of talk about global warming, but not a whole lot of right action. And it really just becomes more of a point of agenda, and like it's almost like all that, because like there's a lot of pent up energy in humanity around trying to get the Earth straight, and trying to turn the ship around, because there are some pretty worrisome signs around the called certain parameters of our planet not going right. And at the same time, there's all that pent-up energy that just goes into talk and no action, which is quite sad to watch, because there's a lot of charge. And when there's a lot of charge, it's the collective of humanity wants change. But instead of meaningful change, we're just going to get a whole lot of talk on all the high levels, and potentially some regulation that's going to end up doing absolutely nothing for the environment. So that's kind of sad, but not very surprising. A whole lot of activist movements are going to be birthed next year. All kinds of different social issues, from like women-related issues to minorities, all kinds of minorities, to immigrant rights. Hello, United States. To yet another big chunk of people who want to do something for the environment. Ooh, I really love that. Okay, some very important seeds are going to be sown for conscious communities. Now, you're going to probably hear me talk about conscious communities for the next 20 to 30 years. And so far, where the conscious communities of Earth are, it's even before the fledgling state. Like, it's before the birth of them, right? So like whatever conscious communities exist right now, they're the step 0. They're not even step 1 yet. But some very beautiful seeds are being sown in 2025 in order to really help birth and co-create with the land. So these conscious communities that I'm talking to are essentially an antithesis to smart cities. And smart cities, I've talked about that last year as well in the update. But smart cities are something that, is becoming more and more prevalent. But essentially, smart cities are very condensed, very urban areas that are going to be full-on run by artificial intelligence and technology. And they're going to be optimized to death at face value. But at the same time, it's going to be like living in a microwave, or like living in a pressure cooker, where there's very little organic stuff that's going to be left, and there's going to be full-on control by, call it, the system. As an antithesis to that, because there is a balance to everything that happens in existence, you're going to see all of these conscious communities and people going off the grid. Usually, for a conscious community to become rooted, you need two things. You need the founder or the founders, the people who can actually be that beacon of light, who have enough, a high enough level of vibration that they could anchor something very special, something very organic, very natural, very magical into the fabric of planet Earth. That's the first thing that you need. And the second thing that you need is the land that is willing to participate. And so I see multiple points within planet Earth awakening and calling far and wide, making like a big call, calling the right entrepreneurs, the right leaders in to start those communities. And like, it's just early seedlings. It's like just very, very first things, like somebody considering to buy land, or somebody maybe like making a deposit to buy the land. Somebody just like maybe working with the architect of like to try to understand, okay, how can you build something that is truly sustainable? It's not just called sustainable, but truly is sustainable and in complete unison with Mother Nature, with Mother Gaia. And so you see that in multiple places. It's not just one person that's going to do that, but the land is calling, and it's like a far and wide call from Gaia into all the different corners of the world for these leaders to wake up to their calling and start making changes and start making moves. And that's quite beautiful. And I'm really, really happy that is happening. At the same time, the other seeds that are being sown at this time are people looking to revive the ancient agricultural variety. So some people looking at seed banks and trying to understand, okay, can we bring back some of the former variety that used to exist on planet Earth? And I'm talking edible plants here. Not so easily done, but this is definitely going to be in multiple places. There's going to be that resurgence of interest in very ancient cultures and agricultural just plants, right? And how they were done. So there's a lot of movement there. There's a little bit of a movement starting to stir in a big way around sustainability and fashion, which is a big, big, big problem in and of itself. Just the waste in that industry and the absolute lack of sustainability in that industry. We're going to see some interesting fabrics come in. And some innovation in that space as well that creates an opening for a lot of entrepreneurship. So that is really, really beautiful. What else is there at the macro level? High tensions, I've already said that. Don't expect a very easy year. It's definitely going to be a news-filled year for sure. Nothing else outside the ordinary. Everything else is pretty run-of-the-mill. Now, I will tell you that questioning of what are we truly and what is our purpose is not just happening in the individual level, but countries are starting to answer that. And even the countries that have answered that for themselves in the past are going to re-examine their answers, and they're going to essentially just double-check, hey, is that still what we would love to be doing? Or is it something else? Do we stand for something else? So there is a resurgence for certain countries of their identity. Some countries, instead of kind of playing by the rules, you're going to have some new leaders actually start to emerge. And it's very covert, and it's very, in a microcosm, it's hard to notice and pinpoint. But it's almost like some of these countries are going to start rising up. And not rising up like a revolt or a revolution. That's not what I mean. But rising up in their self-concept to remember who they truly are. And that's a very beautiful resurgence. The U.S. actually is really interesting, is going to go on its own healing journey and its own self-searching journey. And the question that's going to come front and center for the United States is, do we want to live the ideals of the founding fathers, like the forefathers of the United States? Or do we pick a different path? And the path for the U.S., there are two paths. One or the other is going to be picked. But the right path, call it the path of light, is actually returning back to the ideals and returning back to the energies that were first planted within the weft and the fabric of the United States when the Declaration of Independence was first signed. Since then, there's a lot that has been shifted away from those original ideals. And a lot of the beings of light that used to work with the United States no longer do so. So United States has actually this year the chance to make things right again. Is that going to be easy? No, there's a whole lot of resistance in this country towards light. There's a whole lot of resistance in this country towards the right level of change. And all of these checks and balances at the political level are not always helpful if the right person is in charge. But there's definitely, it's not going to be a very easy year for the United States in terms of policy making, and a lot of resistance and a whole lot of people to the kind of change that's going to be proposed. And again, the collective, per usual, is going to decide which way to go. And one road is going to lead to the flourishing of the United States. The other road is going to lead to the eventual decline, which is not to say that decline is going to be imminent, right? Even if the other road is picked, it's not, it's another 30, 40 years before that even takes place. So there is room and there is time. And I'm a believer for sure. What else are we saying? Okay, something's starting to happen with the oceans that I'm not loving. Nothing to be concerned just yet, but the waters are uncertain. The Pacific is very uncertain. The Pacific hasn't been this, because usually the Pacific is very restful, but this year the Pacific is very restless. Usually you see a lot of the up and down patterns with the Atlantic, but this year it's the Pacific. Very interesting. Some deep set patterns want to be cleared up from the Pacific, some of the remnants of even the Lemurian karma. And the Lemurian karma was actually the karma of a bystander. It's like watching somebody drive off a cliff and letting them. So a little bit of that wants to get cleared. We'll see how it wants to get cleared. One of the ways that this can be cleared is through volcanic eruptions. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's one way. But expect some activity in the Pacific for sure, because these energies, they're going to have to resolve themselves somehow. They're, I don't see them either this year, next year, but most likely this year. So watch out for the Pacific. All right, let's dive maybe a little bit more, like we went very macro, we can go micro again. What are the other things? And how can you actually, maybe we can talk about how can you best adjust to the energies. Like, what are the strategies for, surviving 2025? Well, that sounded really morbid. But, what are the personal strategies that you can have? Work with your resistance. Next year, your helper are the energies of surrender and water, right? Like your water is your saving grace, whether that is physical water and staying hydrated, whether that is, or like taking long showers and like really imagining how showers taken away all of the grime and the dirt from your physical and light bodies, all of the above, right? Like water is your friend next year. Alone time, a little bit of a hermit time, right? Like when things get really crazy, allow yourself and have the audacity to have some alone time. Whether that means you just get a hotel room and get outside of your house for 24 hours and do absolutely nothing but stay in the hotel room, like essentially figuring life out, if that's what needs to happen. Just give yourself those times. Don't resist the soul searching, right? Allow yourself to ask the question. Allow yourself to embark on journeys of finding answers. Yes, like if you're being called to read a profound book or do some serious journaling, you will notice that really helps regulate your nervous system. Creative hobbies, specifically music, whether it's playing an instrument, singing, or anything to do with music, I guess, outside of playing an instrument and singing, there's listening to music, which is not quite as helpful, but like pursuing a musical hobby is going to be very healing for next year. You would notice that music, and like, for instance, if you take singing if you take on singing, that in of itself is going to be a healing process next year. It's going to help you do the shedding way quicker and then come out on the other side way better and way easier. Patience is a virtue. Next year, practice patience. Patience and surrender, kind of like they go hand in hand. Try to release and relieve expectations, because a lot of suffering is going to happen from expectations. This is how I expect things to be. This is how things actually are. They're not aligned. Let me be in my suffering mode. You would notice that suffering may not be quite as easy to climb out of next year as it normally is, right? So definitely watch out for suffering and understand that it's the expectations that create suffering. And so always bring yourself back to the present moment. Always bring yourself back to the here and now instead of living in the past or trying to predict the future. That is going to be your healing medicine. That is going to be your healing mechanism. Being in ritual, figuring out where you can slow down instead of going fast. Going on a pilgrimage, doing a plant medicine journey. By the way, never said that in any of my, I think, videos. But for next year, doing a plant medicine journey is actually exceptionally healing. So if ayahuasca has been calling your name, next year may be it. And you know exactly who you are that needed to hear it just now. And just allow yourself to slow down. Allow yourself to not have to go so fast. Reclaim your morning ritual. Come up with a morning ritual that makes you feel grounded, that makes you feel sane, that makes you feel like you are filling your own cup first instead of not, and instead of trying to cater to everybody else. Because that is going to help with your level of sanity. That is going to help with your level of happiness, which is going to transfer to all of the people around you, right? Remember that you are like the center from which vibration emanates, right? And so your vibrations touch everybody. And so if you can self-regulate at the beginning of the day, you're going to notice that everybody else around you is so much happier. And that really helps and promotes that healthy energy exchange. Don't make rash decisions next year. Allow yourself a breather. Allow yourself to think about it. No need to run and jump headfirst into things. Know that next year, the things that are going to happen are happening for you, not just to you. And try to not swim against the current, as challenging as that might be, because there's a whole lot of resistance and a whole lot of hell no coming up for humanity next year. And realize that a lot of that can be cured through acceptance. Like, the world is not going to be a fair place. You're not going to change that by being in resistance to that. By, being in like the raging sacred fire, let's bring the guns, let's bring the swords. That's not the solution next year. I actually, don't recommend that. So the way that you solve for that is through accepting, saying, yes, this too shall pass. Yes, this too shall pass. And that too shall pass. And you would notice that that really helps you move through even very challenging emotions outside of your body next year. What else? Allow the things that need to leave to go. Right? Remember, that's the year of completion. That's the year of, in some ways, letting go. So do understand that when the world takes something away from you, it is because something way better is awaiting on the other side. Whether that is a relationship, whether that is a job, whether that is a promotion that went to somebody else and not you, whether that is a house that you wanted, but somebody snatched it from under your nose, whatever that may be. If it didn't happen, it's because it's not meant to be. It's not meant for you. It was somebody else's in the first place. Remember, your things, truly your things, are going to be yours. They're going to stay yours. They're not going to escape you in 2025. The things that are yours, they're going to flow into your open arms next year. There's a little bit of that, by the way. There are some pretty massive parts of the year, about a third of the year, that's very connected to the universal flow of abundance. So, we're finally getting to the good news, right? So some of you may get unexpected sums of money from places, unexpected, salary upgrades or raises or bonuses or things that like just money coming through from nowhere, or like winning certain things that you did not expect, or certain gifts that you could not have predicted. So there is a little bit of that, but also no, right? Because this universal flow gets activated. It's the ebb and the flow actually that gets activated, right? So certain things may be taken away and other things may be freely given to you. And you would notice that the easier you let go of the things that are meant to go, the easier the faster you close that loop and get okay with the fact something has been taken away from you, the faster you can receive and the more you can receive. And that's when that becomes really, really fun, right? It's a little bit of a tally of the year. Like the give and take needs to be balanced. And usually, when we're ending a cycle, if you have done a lot of good in the cycle, the universe, quote unquote, owes you. And so, or sometimes when it hasn't been so peachy and rosy and all amazing, you would notice that certain things may be taken away. Know that that is just the balancing act. That is just the normal ebb and flow. There's no point resisting it. There is no point not being okay with that. In fact, the more you resist, the more energy you just end up wasting for nothing, right? So just agree and understand, hey, that's the closing of the cycle. It needs to happen the way it needs to happen. This is not the full on, like, this is not the same thing as karmic payback, by the way. But there are certain things, like, again, in order to receive something, you may need to give something. Just be okay with that. And even if you lose something, like you lose a wallet or, I don't know, something breaks, like a car breaks down and you need to, pay for all of the repairs, know that it's meant to happen during the year of the 9 because some things just need to be equalized. And to equalize things via a material object is the cheapest way of equalizing that. It's way cheaper, if you think about it, than breaking a leg or, I don't know, like something even worse happening, right? So if the universe takes a material possession away from you, bless it and say thank you next year. So that is what it is. I wanted to see if the collective has any questions for me on the energies of 2025. So the question is, usually 9 is a little bit of a spiritual number, but what you have been talking about is very material. So is this 9 different from the rest? Every 9 is different. What's ironic about numerology is you cannot just take things at face value. Just because a 9 always means one thing. The 9 is a number of alchemy. How that alchemy transpires, how that alchemy actually happens is going to be dependent on the year. So you're going to have to read more than just like at face value. What does the 9 usually mean? It's not non-spiritual. It's a pretty spiritual cycle, all things considered, because when entire humanity starts to question what's next and what's my purpose, I consider it very spiritual because purpose lives in the highest chakras, right? Purpose is not something you think about when you're in a position of fear or, like you're not in the lower centers when you think about purpose. Purpose is like that bridge, that doorway into divinity, if we're being completely honest. So yeah, it is a spiritual year. Now, the thing is, we are living in a very material world. And because of that, spiritual is always going to be entwined with the material, especially for 99.99% of humanity. They're not fully separate. They're one and the same thing. And, it is a very hybrid type of year. Like you are going on your own hero's journey, which is a spiritual journey. You are a spirit incarnated in matter. And like all of these questioning and soul searching, I consider that. And hermetism is going to be required to get you there. That's very spiritual. Now, you are going to be tested through your material things, right? You are going to be tested next year for sure. You're going to be tested on the strength of your commitment. You're going to be tested on how far you're willing to go to get the answers, how much stamina you have, how much courage you have, and like the level of commitment, like specifically when you start getting a little bit of clarity on your purpose. The universe is going to be like, well, now you know that you're meant to do this. What are we doing about that? What's your step 1? What's your step 2? There's a little bit of impatience actually on the side of the universe to get things going for you. So like this 9 in certain ways is going to feel like a hybrid between a 9 and a 1 because again, the Aries energies are very, very strong. And the energies of the ego are going to be very, very strong. What is it that I want? And of course, anytime we're dealing with energies of the ego, the shadow of the ego comes up, which is my way or the highway. And like people wanting something at the expense of others, right? And having to work through that shadow. And again, through that concept of shedding and that snake coming through as the patron saint of next year, you're going to be forced to let go of certain things. You're going to be forced to change. Change is not optional next year. Absolutely freaking not. If you think you're going to walk out of 2025 the same way that you walked in, you're going to see how wrong you are. Like that is just, you're going to be night and day as a human being. It's up to you though, if that's going to happen through suffering and resistance or acceptance, because, it's your choice. You can choose one or the other. And I would say that the more you accept the present moment, the more you accept things the way they are, the easier it's going to be for you to start your next year, the year of the 1, set up for success. The more you resist change, the more you want to hold on to the old things, the more you want to hold on to your old self-concept, the more you want to stay in your lane without asking all the existential questions, and the more you not want to do the work, the harder it is going to be for you to set up for the next 9-year cycle. I hope that helps. I'm going to take one more question around the energies of 2025. The question is, what is the biggest lesson for humanity in 2025? What is the best lesson that we can learn? I would say that sometimes in order to find our purpose, and sometimes in order to pursue our very lofty ideals, and align with like the higher aspects, the tests and trials and tribulations that we have to pass through are very material and very close to home. It doesn't mean that the trials and tribulations that we're going through are not spiritual. It doesn't mean that they're not meaningful. But it does mean that this line between spiritual, energetic, and material becomes very, very blurry. The biggest lesson, though, for humanity is how quickly can we shed old patterns? Because the number one thing that's going to come front and center is we are becoming too heavy of a load to bear for planet Earth. And that means that a whole lot of us are going to have to make a whole lot of changes very quickly. So the biggest test for humanity is how quickly could you shed all of the layers, all of the outlived patterns, all of the things that make you and your lineage stuck. How quickly can you shed those to move on to bigger and better things? Because the next cycle could be a breakthrough cycle for humanity. But in order for that to happen, a whole lot of shedding would need to happen or would need to take place in 2025. All right, my darlings. Here's what I want to leave you with. I know that sometimes when I am giving you this long-term projection that is not like purple rainbows and unicorns, it may sound unsettling. The intention is to prepare you for the fact that there may be curveballs and there may be a lot of madness happening around you. Do know that you are in charge and in control of your own slice of the universe. Do know that no matter how big the tempest that is raging outside of you, your state within can be bliss. Your state within can be happiness, and you can be 100%, 1,000,000%, 1,000,000,000,000% on purpose. So do not be afraid to ask the tough questions. Do not be afraid to go through the ups and the downs of next year, because the level of transformation available to you is the highest possible within a single year. Yes, next year is going to feel like 3 years combined into a single year. Yes, you're going to feel like you learned a ton. Yes, you're going to feel like sometimes you have more questions than answers. But it could be a ride of a lifetime if you allow yourself to be present to the new energies that want to come through. If you allow yourself to be present to what is the life that you're fully committed to creating for yourself, and getting busy clearing out anything that does not belong. I know you're going to do great next year. I know that you can make it a fantastic year. Stay grounded. Figure out and carve out some time for personal ritual and for self-regulation. And I will see you on the other side. So much love for you.